Hey guys, it's Jennifer and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, we talk about scary, spooky, quirky, and sometimes tragic history. So if you're into that, stick around because today we're gonna dive into the story of one of the most infamous figures in my motherland's history. And his story is pretty crazy. It's not for the faint of heart, so definitely trigger warning right here. I'm talking about Yoo Young-chul, also known as the Raincoat Killer. The man who terrorized Seoul in the early 2000s and became not the first, but he was definitely one of the most notorious serial killers. His crimes shocked the entire nation, and today we're going to do a deep dive into all the twisted details. So grab a drink and grab a snack because today we're traveling back to South Korea in the 2000s. All right, so let me take you back to South Korea, April 18th, 1970, to a small rural village called Gochanggon, where Yoo Young-chul was born. Throughout the video, I will just refer to him as Yoo. Nothing about his early days screamed future serial killer, but as we all know, looks can be deceiving. So Yoo's childhood, not exactly sunshine and daisies. A few years after he was born, his parents split up and he and his siblings went on to live with his father. And this is where things get a little bleak. His father was reportedly an alcoholic, like many old Korean men back then, and he was apparently abusive to the kids. Now, add poverty to the mix, Yoo's family struggled big time, and he grew up as a quiet and withdrawn kid. And that combination in old school Korea, like being withdrawn combined with being poor, made him an easy target for bullying. People say this is where his hatred for the rich really took root. He saw these privileged kids with their nice clothes and easy lives, and that lit a fire of resentment in him. So fast forward to adulthood, Yoo actually manages to graduate, so props to him for that, and he goes on to work a bunch of random jobs. Labor, security, you name it. But his personal life, a mess. His relationships were all doomed from the start. It's like he couldn't create meaningful connections. Isolation became his best friend, and that loneliness combined with his violent tendencies was a recipe for disaster. And he wasn't just a loner. I mean, some reports say that he was violent as a kid. I don't know, but as he grew up, those violent tendencies didn't go away, but they just simmered. One big thing about him is that he loved to party. So he had a bit of a nightlife. He was a regular to nightclubs and massage parlors, the happy ending kind. And this wasn't just casual fun. Casual fun. No, it was an obsession. He fixated on women, specifically those in the sex trade, and saw them as objects to dominate and control. And before he even started killing and becoming one of the most infamous serial killers in Korea, he had plenty of run-ins with the law. And I mean plenty, so let me break it down for you. In 1988, arrested for theft and served 10 months in jail. In 1991, for theft again, 8 months in jail. 1995 for selling child corn, and that should have been the end of it. Like, he should have went to prison for life, but he didn't, because in 1998, theft, forgery, and identity theft did another 2 years. 1991, oh, and this is beyond me, but this is the time where he gets married to his girlfriend at the time and has a kid. In 2000, he was arrested for essaying a 15-year-old girl and only served 3 years and 6 months. On October 27th, his wife divorces him. I mean, good for you, girl. And 2003, he's released. So the year he's released, 2003, September 24th, Yoo commits his first murder. He breaks into a wealthy couple's home, and the man was a university professor named Lee Tok-soo, whom he stabbed in the neck and proceeded to bludgeon both him and his wife with a hammer to death. And let me just say, I don't think he was like the brightest bulb in the tree, like the sharpest tool in the shed, because he tries to make it look like a robbery, but nothing was taken, which obviously confused cops. On October 9th, Yoo strikes again, and he breaks into a home and brutally bludgeons a grandmother to death on the spot. Hearing the commotion, her daughter-in-law comes downstairs. Yoo kicks her in the stomach and demands to know who else is in the home. I think she was trying to scare him off at this point because she does mention her husband's upstairs along with her son. Tragically, this backfires and Yoo goes upstairs and encounters the disabled son and murders him. There was no husband, but the damage was already done. Another killing takes place on October 16th, where he breaks into a millionaire's home and finds the wife. He drags her into the bathroom where her son would later find her bludgeoned, and actually she was alive when he found her initially, but then died later on. On November 18th, Yoo breaks into yet another home and finds the housekeeper named Pae Ji-hye. Obviously, she's like, "Who are you?" And Yoo flashes her his knife and goes upstairs. This is where he finds the homeowner Kim Jong-seok in his bed and immediately stabs him to death. The housekeeper was actually taking care of a baby at the time, and when Yoo came back downstairs, he takes the baby from her and places him on the couch and puts a blanket on top of him. While trying to break into the safe, he cuts himself, and to get rid of any evidence, he burns the place down. But fortunately, the baby was rescued. And from what I've read, I think he does stop for a little bit because he ends up dating an escort girl. But she eventually finds out about his criminal record and tells him she never wants to see him again and breaks things off. Good job, girl. However, on the downside, this enrages him and sparks another killing spree. On February 9th, 2004, he murders a random street vendor named Chung Young-tae and burns his car. On February 16th, 2004, he chokes and dismembers a girl and tosses her remains on a trail near Songgang University, and her name was Kwon Jin-hee. On April 14th, 2004, he kills another vendor named An Chae-sun for selling him fake Viagra. At this point, the investigations around his murders of the rich people starts to really intensify, and it's believed that this is the reason he decides to switch his MO to prostitutes and escorts, or in his words, people who he saw as undesirable or people who didn't matter. Because for his next kill, Yoo lures an escort girl into his apartment where he bludgeons her, removes her head from her body, and discarded her remains. This would continue for 8 more prostitutes and escort girls, and they were buried in the mountains surrounding the city. Police actually discovered 11 bodies from the mountain behind Pangwon Temple after Yoo's arrest. As his killing spree went on, he didn't just murder people, he tortured them. His favorite method of murder, can you guess? Bludgeoning with a hammer and then sometimes choking them with his bare hands. But what really made these murders truly horrifying is the way that Yoo would sometimes pose the bodies afterwards, like in disturbing and ritualistic ways. He'd place them in public spaces or hidden locations, sometimes with their faces mutilated. Like he would almost leave the bodies in a way where he was trying to convey a message or leave a lasting impression of terror. He was also notorious for removing certain body parts from women as a form of degradation. His crimes were marked by extreme sadism and violence. As we know, many of the victims were women, and oftentimes he would essay them before killing them. Yoo's motives were not only fueled by his desire to kill, but also his deeply disturbed need to control and degrade his victims. The details of his sexual crimes, including post-mortem acts, were outlined in his investigation and trial. He also told the court that he would sometimes eat the liver of his victims, but that was never proven. But I definitely wouldn't put it past him. But like I said, I mean, he wasn't the smartest guy. Like, he got caught because he was constantly calling the same massage parlor, and they started to realize, you know, we're missing a lot of our workers. So obviously this tips the police, and he's arrested 2 days after his last murder. He confesses to the killings, and he briefly escapes because he fakes a seizure, but they do find him 12 hours later. That's embarrassing. And as you can probably guess, his trial was not easy. Yoo appears for the first time in court on September 6, 2004. He apologizes to the families of the victims, but then follows that up with saying that he has no intention of stopping. murdering people. He lunged at judges. He attacks a spectator. Oh, and he also tries to unalive himself. But his chilling lack of empathy was what really shook the public. A psychologist who assessed Yoo concluded that he wasn't mentally ill, but he did show signs usually associated with antisocial disorder. And this is where a person creates their own belief system based on their distrust of moral and social norms. When asked about his murders, he replies, quote, "Women shouldn't be sluts and the rich should know what they've done," end quote. On December 13th, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. And this actually fuels a debate of capital punishment in the country because although it was permissible, it hadn't been carried out in 6 years. It appeared it was abolished before his arrest, but obviously support for it grew after. The Seoul Central District Court convicted him of 20 murders, although the true number is most likely a lot higher than that. He showed no emotion when the verdict was handed down, and he remained eerily calm throughout that whole part. Prosecutors requested for the death penalty, for which Yoo thanked them, and he is currently still in jail at Seoul Detention Center. The story of Yoo Young-chul's reign of terror is still one that haunts South Korea today. His case is a grim reminder of how dark human nature can become when unchecked by society. But it also raised the question of mental health and the failures within the system that just couldn't help him before it got to that point. And what's truly disturbing is how normal Yoo seemed to the people around him. People say, he was able to blend into society fine, and he was just harboring all those crazy secrets. So there you have it, the terrifying story of Yoo Young-chul, South Korea's most notorious serial killer. So of course I find this out after I do all the research, but there is a documentary on him on Netflix called The Raincoat Killer. If you guys are interested, it has all the details. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if there are any cases similar to this one that you'd like me to cover. And as always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And until next time, stay safe. Bye guys.